Okay, so we'll start by looking at where we just went through high level of the Android application, but we'll go much deeper today, and we will try to understand more and more about these things. So especially with the main section over here, this is the section where we have a lot of source code related. So as I mentioned, we in typical Android development, you will have this res and layout. So these are the layouts. This is like kind of the view that models what we see in the application. So we have XML files describing our UIs, and each and every layout, including activities, fragments, or some sort of partial sections, we are going to be defining these things in XML. Okay, these are in the layout. So this layout is just how the UI is going to be look like. Okay, so it's there going to be a button, there are going to be text, there are going to be some fragments. All these things are just a definition. These are like where we have defined the things. Okay, actually what should happen when we are interacting with them, actually are we gonna put content to these things? If there are any interaction, let's say for example, what should happen when we click on a button? It is on the corresponding Kotlin class. Okay, so you have to remember, let's say for the example, we have an activity main, the corresponding class which handles the actions or loading everything, those are coming under this main activity. The naming is not, it is not something like binded to have. It is like this activity main should be main activity, fragment first, it is first fragment. There is no what do you call naming convention, but this seems to be working fine for all the years that I have seen, because it's easy to map. Okay, fragment second is second fragment, so okay, this is talking about this class. Okay, when we are talking about okay, third fragment, there should be XML file which represent fragment underscore third. Okay, so that's the mindset or the easiness of remembering this stuff, which helps us with application, the actual with the mapping on the XML view and the corresponding fragment. Okay, so we looked at a lot of these things. We talked about the design views, code split view, and the split view and code views. Okay, and most of the time we'll be working with the code view. That makes more easy, more appealing. But if you want to see it in action, go with the split view. I'm not 100% comfortable working with the design view. You might be, but my preference is go with at least the split view, so you know what we are working with. Okay, and we talked about the layouts. Okay, I ask you guys to research on different layouts available in Android. So we are using this coordinator layout. Okay, and we actually did some modifications on the second fragment to understand a little bit about it, but let's move dive more deep dive. Sorry, we are not going to move to be diving very deep in this XML constraint layout. That's because there are a lot of tutorials that you can find. But also the other reason is we'll be heavily focusing on the new stuff. That is not the XML view. You don't have to code UI like this. We have the Jetpack Compose, which is more faster way, and it's more the code UI is code. The UI is designed via code, so it's really easy to understand. So you don't have two separate files, one for the layout, one for the logic. They're in the same one, so it's easy to manage, easy to work it. But I'm teaching you this because still these kind of projects exist, and you should know about it. And it's gonna give us a head start as well. Okay, so let's start with going a little bit deeper into the activity. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, you can have multiple activities within an Android application, but the trend now is to have one single main activity and have different fragments on top of that. So it will be easy to work with. Okay, as I mentioned, fragments are a little bit lightweight compared to activities, so we can definitely benefit the memory that is allocated to an activity is a little bit high, so we can utilize the fragment in this case. Okay, so we have a main activity. Yes. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, the main activity is something is the first activity that we will see. We have defined that in the Android. Sorry, where was it? In the fragment. Sorry, Android manifest. If you guys can remember, in manifest we have defined, okay, the activity have an intent filter. That means whenever the application launches, the main activity will be the one to be represented. Okay, we have this main activity, and you guys can see clearly that activity is inheriting something called app compact activity. Okay, but if you go on the hierarchy, and you will see the app compact activity, it is coming from fragment activity, and fragment activity coming from content activity coming from component activity, and so on and so forth. At the end, it will be coming from a class called activity, which you will find in Android itself. So any activity, there can be hierarchical steps that will abstract things and everything, but at the end, what we are seeing in here is going to be an activity which is coming from the Android itself. Okay, so app compact activity is an activity. So we will have we have an activity called main activity. Okay, our naming is given to this is the main activity. Okay, give me a second. So I need to open my browser. So yeah, and there are a few things that we need to know about an activity. Okay, activity have things called life cycle events. Okay, so life cycle events are basically methods that is triggered by Android system when we are launching the activity. Okay, so in a typical Android application, okay, you will see few in a typical Android application, you will see few of these life cycle events. Okay, let's see what are the other life cycle events and how these things are working with Android life cycle. Android life cycle, yeah. So we can have activity life cycles. Let me get it on the screen. Okay. So hope you guys can see Chrome. So activity life cycle concept, it is like navigation between stages of the activity. Okay, that means whenever we create something, when we actually create an activity, activity goes through these different life cycles. Okay, so these are the methods that get invoked when we launch an activity. Okay, so first of all, launching in the sense we are instantiating it. That means we are invoking that activity. So when that happens, what should go is we are calling a method called onCreate. Okay, so first of all, when we are launching, okay, you know, we have the Kotlin and Java concepts like constructors. It is not the constructor that we are talking here. These are the life cycle events that is get invoked by Android itself once we are done. So whenever we launch an activity, so Android will automatically call this onCreate method and it will do its work. Okay, so we create an activity, and any activity that is created, okay, unless you didn't modify any of these life cycle events, they go through these different life cycles, and they go through this activity shutdown life cycle as well. So first of all, when we launch an activity, it will invoke this onCreate lifecycle method. Okay, then they will invoke the onStart, onResume, and finally, then we get to go with the activity run. Okay, and if for some reason, you know, you have a limited screen area, what will happen is you can put this activity back and get another activity in. For example, while you are playing a game, you get a notification, and what you do is currently stop that game and you will go back to your email client. Or sometimes you have seen while you are chatting, someone is sending a WhatsApp message and saying, okay, here's a new cool video that you need to click on. Then once you click on the video, it will navigate to YouTube or whatever the content that you are seeing. So you are swapping between activities. Okay, not only the applications, but sometimes even in the same application, there can be multiple activities, as I mentioned. Even though it is not a good common practice these days, there can be multiple activities running in the same application. So we can go from one activity to another, maybe one application to another. So when we are doing that, it is automatically invoke this onPause method. Okay, and once you are doing that, you can call the onStop method. And once you want to definitely you want to free some memory, or you are no longer to use this, you can close it by your task manager and everything. It will call the onDestroy method, and activity will be completely shut down. Okay, so so during these life cycles, you can see that they are going on different callbacks as well. So what should happen when you resume, when you onPause and user resume to the activity? It's going to call back to the onResume method, and it will work. Okay, so what happens when you onStop? Okay, you are completely putting on the foreground, and when you are coming back, okay, you have seen that video and you are coming back to your main application. So it's called the onRestart method, and it's called for onStart, and then again the application is start running. Okay, but on destroy, it's completely going to destroy, and there is no callback method for the application. All you have to do is you have to come back from the activity launch section and go through these life cycles. So why these life cycles are here, and why these things, what are the use case of these things? So let me explain. So the activity itself, as I mentioned, it's just a small class, okay, a Kotlin class. And when you are launching that activity, as I mentioned, activity is coming with a UI. There should be a UI to show. When you launch an activity, if there is no UI, you can't see anything. So what happens is, so Android will launch this activity, and when we are creating onCreate, when they are calling onCreate, okay, think as a story point of view. Okay, activity launch this, Android launch this activity. Okay, Android does this. Okay, launching this activity, and on create method, it is responsible for creating and managing our UI. So what an activity is gonna have some sort of view. As I mentioned, there should be something that is visible to us. Okay, so the visible things find that thing. Okay, we should say, okay, Android, if you are going with this activity, okay, you should show this view. Okay, you should show this XML, or you should show this view inside in this activity. So the binding with the UI happens on this on create method. Okay, so on start method, what will happen is it will do some other stuff, like say for example, okay, in order to start this activity, the UI is okay, UI is binded, but in order to start this activity, there might be few things that we need. Maybe we need to gather some data. Sometimes we can call these things in on create as well, but on start there might be some some activities that we put into pause. We need to resume that. For example, let's say you are working on application that plays sounds. Okay, so the when you are putting it to sleep, when you're putting in when you're making it go to the background, okay, you can stop the playing, you can stop playing the sound. Okay, so when you are putting it to the stop, you will stop the playing sound. Okay, but when you are restarting, when you are coming back, you don't have to recreate it. Okay, you have already created the sound and you have loaded everything there. All you need to do is play. Okay, you have allocated the memory, you have created everything. Now what you have to do is, okay, before you stop it, you just paused it. Now you don't have to allocate memory again and again. What all you have to do is play it again. So you call on start. By calling on start, you can have playing that sound again back. Likewise, during these life cycle events, it can go forth and back, and you can perform a lot of activities based on these things. Okay, so make sure you have a good idea on the life cycle events, because based on life cycle events, we do a lot of changes, a lot of things. Okay, bindings, resume, stopping, memory allocations, memory free, those kind of lot of things that we can do. If you have a good programmer, you should have a good idea on how and when these life cycle events are called. Okay, especially you should have at least these life cycle event flow in your mind. Otherwise it is hard to picture an activity's life cycle. Okay, moving on back to the our activity. Okay, you can see that activity has this on create method, on create option menu. This is not a life cycle event, but event get triggered when you are creating a menu. On option item selected, on support navigate up. Okay, so these are this one is the only life cycle event that we can see out from this on create method. That's because as I mentioned earlier, this is not the activity itself. Activity itself is something from the hierarchy, in the hierarchy, and on create is one thing that we can override. These are added by different type of activities that is built on top. Okay, a basic activity will have few life cycle events. These life cycles activities, these are not actually Android's activity life cycle, but something coming from app compact activity or something along the way. There can be these life cycle events, or these hooks we call. These will be called in appropriated time, but for life cycle events, on create is something that is definitely that we're going to be working with. So let's look at the on create. Okay, so there are there are a lot of things in here. We will just go one by one and try to understand these things. Okay. All right. So sorry. So first thing that you need to know, okay, there is the onCreate method, and you can see this override keyword in here. That means this is something we are overriding. That means we are if you guys have followed basic inheritance, override in the sense saying okay, there is implementation one of the superclass, but we don't care about it. And I mean we definitely do, but we are taking control over it and we are giving our own logic to it. Okay, this is where polymorphism happens. So we have generic activity, but we are overriding it and we are customizing to our use. So that's what we call a polymorphism, different types. So first thing you do is window compact and set decorate fits system window. I'm not sure what this exactly does. Let's see, set whether decorator view should fit root level content for the windows inside compact. If false, framework not fit into the insects and just pass through the window. I'm not totally sure what it does, but by looking at this documentation, it's just simply saying, okay, it's gonna fit on the root level of the content view. Okay, and that's the idea that I got. This is something new for me as well. The Android system changed a lot. So it's okay if you don't know what you are doing at the first glance. Maybe sometimes when you are troubleshooting, you might remove these, or you might change these things. Okay, so for now, even for me, this is not something that I'm familiar with, but completely okay if it is not blocking or doing any sort of bugs in our code. Okay, next thing that we are calling a super onCreate. That means yes, super in the sense we are calling our parent. Okay, that means we are calling app compact activity onCreate method, and we are passing these save instance bundle. We will look into save instance bundle in a little bit. That means whatever the parameters that we are getting, we are calling it, we are passing it to our app compact activity. That means our super class, we are passing it. This is just formal thing that we do normally when we are overriding. If you want to utilize the things which is in the app compact activity, okay, we want to use, we are not completely rewriting the things, but we call the parent class onCreate method and we add some things our own. So this is where that we're going to do. We call the super class onCreate method and we add our own logic here. So that's what's going on in here. Okay, that's what this super onCreate method does. Okay, next thing is bindings. Okay, where are these bindings coming from? We can see private late init var binding activity main binding. Okay, so this is something you will see a lot of time in applications. Okay, so what is this activity main binding is supposed to do? Okay, so let's see in real in action activity main bindings, and there is something called inflate, and we have passed the layout inflator. So there are a lot of things going on. Okay, let's see what this does. Let's click on by control clicking on this binding. Okay, you will go back to something like, okay, we are coming back to our activity XML. Okay, let's do that again if it is an error or something like that. So I am clicking on this activity main binding. Okay, when I click it, it directs me to the activity main XML. So what is the reason behind that? Why it is showing the XML file instead of a class. Okay, definitely this is a class. Okay, because we are referring a class within the Kotlin code. So this should be a class, but when you are clicking on it, it is going to uh, uh, the XML itself. Okay, the reason is we have done something called UI binding in Kotlin. Okay, that means whenever we are defining something in this XML, for example, we have created the fab in here with the ID fab. Okay, we have created a toolbar with the ID of toolbar, and we have maintained each and every. We have created each and every things in here. For example, the layout and everything. We have created these things, and Android will automatically make that bindings for us. Okay, the reason behind this inflator is that say for example the communication between the Android XML code and Kotlin code, they should be connected somehow. Okay, there should be a connection between these things. How we gonna connect? So if you guys see, it's magically connected with each other by something called bindings, which is automatically generated for us. So if you really want to see how these generated things are, binding thing generated. So, yeah. So if you look at the class in here, the build, and there is actually in the project view, if you go to build, generated, data binding base class sourced out, and you will see that activity main binding. This is the class that we have seen in here. And if you look at it, if you open it, what will happen is it will be having all the XML view related stuff binded to in this class. Okay, this is a generated class. You can see that we have the coordinator layout. We call it as a root layout. Let's go back to our project and let me show what I mean. Main Java main activity. Okay, we click on it, and you can see that this is the coordinate layout that we see. Let me go in here. So this is the coordinator layout. Okay, this is kind of the topmost layer view that we will see. So we call this normally a root view. Okay, so if you go to activity main binding, you get the coordinator layout as a root view. Now, if you go a little bit down in here, and you will see the fab. Okay, so if you go back to the binding, you can see that floating action button fab is there, and you will see a toolbar here. And let's see in here. Yes, the toolbar. Okay, and the binding is done for us. The material toolbar is here. So each and every content that we are putting in here, okay, anything that we put in here, it will be binded automatically for us. Okay, for example, let me go to another view, so can demonstrate more components I have. It's easy. Okay, let's do it like this. We add another one in here. So for example, I under the text content, I will add a text view. Okay, so text view. Yes, okay. With, I will say match parent, that means whatever the match web content. The width will be matching its parents. That means this text view have the width of its parents width, and the height, it will just wrap the content. That means whatever the content it has, it will take that amount only. So let's see it in split view. Not sure whether you guys can see this. So I have the text view. Yeah, on top in here, let's add dummy text in here. Text, let's say dummy text. Okay, you can see that the dummy text is appearing in here. Yes, that is okay. And so in order to uniquely identify this text view, we should give an ID. Since this is the first time that we are giving ID, make sure you have the ID first. And I will say info text view. Okay, I created a text view on here and I gave the ID of info text view. Now, if I save this and if I go to project and I go to main binding, okay, it's still did not recognize the thing. So what I will do is I will build the project. Sometimes it takes a little bit time to build. Clean project, and I will go to run the project and rebuild project. Okay, since these codes are generated, sometimes they're not generated on the fly. We have to manually build these things. Okay, again, I think still building. That's why we don't see it's not integrated. But app, there should be a build directory, still building. Let's give it a little bit time. Failure with the exception. This version one is compose compiler require Kotlin. Did I in app right? Sorry, let's go to build and maybe that's giving this due to this driver. We will just run the app itself, so it will build on the background. Okay, now you guys can see it automatically appeared this build directory. You can see that first fragment is there, our dummy text on top. Okay, and I will go to build directory generated, data binding base class out, and I will go activity main binding. Now you guys can see it has created a new entry for our text view. Okay, so what under the hood happens is when we are creating this text view in XML, a corresponding class is generated for us, activity main binding job. Okay, so remember when we are running this main activity, when we are designing this main activity, this is just a skeleton for the Android application. Skeleton in the sense to make things much easier to visualize rather than we do these things in code. Okay, it's easier to us. Okay, if we have something like this, it will show like a dummy text. Okay, now if I want to change the color, if I don't change the gravity, I can say, okay, go into the center. Yes, in here, based on this XML, we can visualize something in here. Okay, but in order to run these things, if you want to see these in emulator or real device, what you have to do is you have to always build this. You have to build and run. Now, if I want to see this in my emulator, now you can see the all build is having these dummy text on the left, but I have managed to keep it in the center. And if I run it again, now with the new build, only then that I can see how okay, dummy text is on here. Okay, so by doing this XML is only a helping hand to see how my UI is gonna look like. This is how it's gonna look like. Android is smart enough to convert this view into a real class. Okay, this in this case this generated class, which is corresponding to this XML. So this XML is converted to source code like Java or Kotlin, and on the under the hood, what we're going to be using is this generated Java class. So this is just a representation that will make things easy for us when we are designing. But under the hood, we are generating something corresponding to this XML, and the generated one in here is activity main binding. And in the Kotlin, when we are referring these things in our main activity, we are not simply referring to this one, but it's binding. Okay, the binding is the place where we are looking into the calling and everything. How the glue is happened is using this activity main binding class. Okay, so this is not the initial way, or the way we supposed to see in Android. It was a lot harder, but they have enabled these activity main bindings and seeing everything. So it makes us life a little bit easier. If you guys don't know, we were having a lot of troubles inflating, I mean, making the connection between these two. But nowadays in Android, we have this binding by default, and it works magically. So, but you know the mechanism behind it. There is XML, corresponding generated file will be generated, and the generated file is the way we're going to be working with. Okay, so in a nutshell, this XML file going to be a Java class at the end, and this Java class is what we are referring in here. So this is the old way of developing these things, as I mentioned earlier. Nowadays, this main binding, this generated class, some sort of, at least some sort of this will be called by us. Okay, so we get rid of XML and we do this main bindings, the defining everything in an Android by ourselves. Okay, so it's easier than we think. Okay, we'll go into that Jetpack Compose stuff, and you'll see how easy that is. For now, remember, XML convert to binding is that what we are using. So this is not this is by default happening for Android projects. If you go to build.gradle file for the app, you can see that build features. In here, you will see view binding true. Okay, if you turn off these view bindings, it will not work. Okay, so the binding will not work as expected unless you have this view binding true. The binding class won't be generated. Okay, so if you are turning off view binding and working with, there is a different implementation which is a little bit hard to manage. So why bother on turning it off? But you guys know how the mechanism going on in the background, so you get an idea. Okay, this is what's happening, how the XML is connected to the activity, how the connection is actually happening is done by this main binding concepts. Okay, view binding concepts. So any questions on the view binding itself? Anyone have any questions on this? So I'm seeing up a little bit because I have another screen. So I just look into the chat and everything. Okay. So remember, this XML file is just easiness or something that makes our life easy to see. Otherwise, everything that we see in this XML is going to be converted into a Java class or Kotlin class, and then it will be used. Okay. So the binding for this inflator is done by this layout inflator. You don't have to worry about these things. It's like under the under the hood mechanisms, layout inflator. Just have a know that this binding is done by this layout inflator. And for the content view, so set content view is like, okay, what is the view that we will be seeing in this on create method? So we have to always provide something for this set content view. Okay, set content view is one of the Android lifecycle, Android activities methods. Unless you give these set content view, app won't work. Okay, let's try to see. Should fail. Yeah, there you go. The app does not launch. It fails. See, app is stopped working and it's not working. That's because when you are looking at the activity, you should say what we should see. Okay, in here, binding root, that means we are saying, oh, okay, when the activity launches, show this constraint, coordinator layout for us. So the root is supposed to be the constraint, coordinator layout. The coordinator layout will be coordinator layout will be the content view. What we want to show is in the bindings you will find something called root. If you go to the main activity binding, okay, in here you will find something called root. Get root in here. That root means whatever the root of the application, it will be shown to you. That is the root view. Sorry, okay, just lost it. Main activity. Okay, so set content view will say, okay, whatever you find in these bindings, take the root and show it to the user, show it to the Android. Okay, why it create a Java class? Can we use any other language in Android? Good point. I'm not 100% sure why it is creating Java, even though we use Kotlin as a main language, why the binding is still in Java. Maybe the default configured way is to configure in Java. I'm not 100% sure on that answer. I will have a look around it, why it is creating in Java rather than it creating in Kotlin. Yes, of course, we are looking in Kotlin, but this is in Java. Why can't we just create in Java? But from a hunch that I get, so see, Kotlin is another JVM language, and even after we convert this Kotlin code, under the hood, they are using some of the we can interact with Kotlin and Java code seamlessly within the language itself. So the Kotlin is a language we can incorporate with Java without an issue. Even with Java, we can convert. We can use Kotlin code itself. So the interoperability is there. But it would make more sense if we generate these bindings in Kotlin as well. Just give me a second. I do take a quick note and see why it is. What's the reason behind it is generated in Java rather than Kotlin? Okay. Honestly, I don't have a direct idea why it is creating a Java file instead of a Kotlin, but it's create since the interoperability is there. You can create Kotlin or Java class. Okay, good question. Yeah, that's something I can learn. Okay. So as you guys can see, the set content view will set the UI, what we will see at first, and set support action bar. So each and every app compact activity, the app compact activity has a what do you call action bar, or something we call the toolbar that you see in the on the top. Okay, we have to specifically say, okay, if you are using a toolbar, please let me know. So we are saying, okay, set support action bar binding toolbar. Okay, so this toolbar, you guys can see that app bar layout inside here. We have a toolbar. We are saying Android activity specifically, especially with this app compact activity should know. It is not something from the Android itself, as I mentioned earlier. These are inherited ones from the activity itself. So these are not corresponding to the ones that you will see in the Android ecosystem as well, but these are different flavors, different things that have changed all over the time. So the app compact activity should have a supporting action bar. We are saying, okay, in the bindings, you will find a toolbar. Use that as your supporting action bar. Okay, in here we said in bindings, you will find a root view. You use that as the place you will show everything. And if you need the action bar within the bindings, you will find toolbar. Use it as your supporting action bar. Okay, so they do the bindings on like why this is important. So if you guys can remember, if you go to the next toolbar, sorry, next fragment, this gets automatically upgraded. The second fragment, and there's this back button, and there's this menu for all one. So these things are automatically done for us. So you don't have to do these things manually. By providing them, okay, this is the toolbar. You do your thing, and it will automatically bind these things like the back button and everything out of the box for you. So you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so that's the reason behind this setting this action bar. And one other thing is, there is for the navigation bar, we have to provide the navigation host controller. Okay, that means the navigation app, this navigation bindings that we have done. So if you guys can remember, we had this navigation graph within our application. Where is that? That is under S. Navigation, yeah. So there is this navigation graph. So we need to make sure, okay, there are fragments that will change with the navigation host frame content. If you guys can see in the fragment itself, in the content main section, where we have seen, this is the placeholder for the fragment. And honestly, Android does not know where to put that main content. Okay, there can be multiple fragments within this section. Now it is we have to say, okay, specifically this host nav host fragment container. So if you are changing fragment, change it in here. This is the host content. You change whatever the content that you want to change under here. So this is the fragment content change that you have to do. And by the way, you guys can see that it is not within the main activity binding. If you go to the main activity, okay, and within the main activity, we are including this content main. Okay, the content main has this fragment fragment content host. Okay, the navigation host containing in the, not in the main activity, but main activity include this layout, and within this included layout, you will have this host, fragment host. So we can't simply go and say find navigation controller, okay, binding, then we have to say what is that content, sorry, in main activity, since we have not have an ID for this layout container, we can't identify this include section, this main content, we can't identify. But if you go inside the fragment itself, it has an ID. Okay, it has an ID. But the problem is, since the main activity XML and content main activity is two different XMLs, within the main bindings, you won't find a reference to that content host. This one is, we can't simply refer to this because it is out of the activity main section. If we have something in here, like the toolbar is here, infotext that we have created is here, and the fab button is here, all these things are within this main activity, and we have given an ID. By doing that, we get a binding for that. Okay. But since this does not contain an ID and it is out of this file, it is in this content underscore main XML, and in there you will find this main content. So there is no way that we can bind directly to the navigation controller, like we have seen binding toolbar, binding root. So there is no direct connection. So in that scenario, we have something called this RID nav host content, nav host fragment content. So what is this R file does, and what is this ID does? So remember, these bindings are there. Okay, this is something, as I mentioned, something new. The view binding generator is something new. But before that, we have something called this R file. Okay, ID and whatever things. So if you look at, if you click on this ID, it's not showing. R is not also showing. I'm not sure. Supposed to go, but seems to be broken. Okay, anyhow, so the R file represent this R.id. This represent the R file represent any resources that you will find in here. Okay, R stand, I think R stand for resources. R.id. Okay, you will find a resource under the ID of navigation host main. Okay, this one is navigation host main. So whenever we are generating an XML, corresponding Java class, in this case, the R file is created, and it holds all the IDs which is related to these XML files. So if we can't directly go with bindings like this, we can obviously use this R.id section, and we can refer that as well. Okay, so R.id is, in the sense, we are referring a resource with the ID of navhost underscore fragment content main. Okay, so this is only needed if the binding is not direct or you can't find the bindings there. Okay. So since the binding is not there, so we will find a navigation controller. We will find a navigation controller under this ID. Okay, you will, so Android is smart enough to find a navigation controller with the ID of fragment main content. Okay, so we get the navigation controller, and now the main activities flow. So if we have some fragments, to be moving around within this activity. So where to put these things? It's going to be putting in this navhost fragment content view main. Okay, this is where we're going to swap those fragments. This is where we're going to be doing this swapping and all. So next thing is we have in this navigation controller, we have this something called this graph. Okay, navigation graph. So the navigation controller has this navigation graph. If you look at this definition, now you guys can see this fragment controller is directing to the navigation graph, nav graph, which is under the navigation underscore nav graph, which is the one you guys were working with. Okay, so navigation XML. So everything that that is coming to this binding make more sense a little bit now. So we have a fragment. The fragment is referring to this navigation bar. This is the navigation bar that we are interested in. And to do the binding, what we say, okay, navigation controller has a graph. Use that bar, use that graph to your app bar configuration. So this app bar configuration is where when you click on these things, they know, okay, these updates are going, okay, this fragment is loaded. Now we have to go back, we have to go back to that fragment. The app bar should be aware of these configuration, these navigation. So that's how we make the connection between this app bar configuration and navigation controls. Okay, it's really simple. We have the navigation controller, we have the app bar configuration, set up action bar with navigation controller. So the navigations that we are doing in here and the app bar is connected by simply going into these few steps. Okay, first we find where to replace, and we get the navigation bar, and we create a new configuration for the app bar. So app bar knows, okay, these are the possible paths that you can go, and we set up that with the navigation. Okay, this is the navigation and this is the app bar connected, and we have a working navigation app bar to our use. Okay, really simple. If you can understand the things, this is how each and every component that we have seen in last lecture is getting together. Okay, they are not magically bonded. These are bonded at this on create method within our activity. Okay, so this is how the UI binding happens. This is how the XML is connected, and this is how the navigation bar is created and connected to within our application. That's the main things that we need to in order to set up. So these are like listeners. We will go into in detail in the listeners. But right now, in order to make the view complete, the navigation in order to work seamlessly with each other, what we need is this simple 6 lines of code, and it will automatically configure our UI and our navigation out of the box. Okay, so it's really simple, not that complex. All you have to do is define the navigation graph, define where the content is going to be, and it will be automatically done for you. Okay, so you can have 2 different navigation bars, but it's will complicated things. For now, we will just have one single fragment. This is the content view that we will see. It will be automatically changed. So when we are changing this, the app bar, it is also known to work with these fragment changes and everything. That because we have done the bindings in our main activity within this few lines of code. So the navigation bar, the fragment changes, everything is connected to each other. Okay. All right. Any questions up until this, guys? Okay. This is, I'm going very slow to give you each and every line of understanding. Okay, so make sure you follow these things, at least how the binding is done with the XML, how the navigation bar is set up within the application, also with the relationship between the application navigation bar, app bar, as well as the fragments it is navigating. Okay, how the fragments is gone through, how we can connect to a fragment which is not in the bindings, and so on and so forth. Just have a good idea on what this does. Okay, right. I hope there are no any questions, so I'll move on. Next thing that I need to do is these are like the bindings. Okay, these are the bindings. These things gonna glue the UI and the code together, but it does not give us an idea once the glue is done, if there are any actions performed, how are we going to manage that? How are we going to change that? How are we going to interact to, or how are we going to do necessary changes based on that? For example, let's say this emulator. Let me get it a little bit here so I don't have these buttons on here. So there is a fab button. Okay, so when we click on the fab button, replace with your own action, we call these as a snack bar, and we can see a snack bar in here. Okay, so we know once we click on it, the snack bar is going to show. Okay, we know once we click on this, it's gonna go for the next view. If you click on this next button, it's gonna go for the next section. So how do we know these things are binded? Okay, so it's really simple. And you guys can see that this first fragment is something that we have inserted in the content main. Okay, but the main XML activity main, we have only few things. We have the app bar on top, we have the content view in the middle, and we have this what do you call the fab button over here. This, the first fragment and the next button and everything, that the text and everything is coming from our first fragment. It is not in the activity itself, but it is coming from the first fragment. So if you do binding on, if you want to do bindings on the activity itself, only we can do is the text view that we have put in here, and the fab button that we have put it in here. Okay, so what we want to do is simple thing. We need to react to this fab action. Okay, we need to react on when we are clicking on this. We need to react to this. So how we're going to do that is the next thing that we're going to be doing. Okay, let me minimize this. Go back to our main activity, and you guys can remember we have something called bindings. Okay, we have something called bindings. So bindings, by using bindings, what we can do is we can say, okay, within bindings, you will find something called fab. Okay, why it is called fab? Because in the main activity, we have ID'd it as the fab. Okay, within the XML, we have ID'd it as fab. So within the main activity, in the main activity, you will find a binding named fab. So what should happen? We click on it. Okay, when we click on it, what should happen? So it's really simple. We can say set on click listener. So set on click listener corresponding to a event. Okay, so sorry about that. So set on click listener, that means I will put a listener on this fab. Okay, I will set a listener on this fab. So whenever somebody click on it, what should happen? This is what it should happen. Okay, so whenever we are click on, whenever somebody click on this, somebody is listening to these things. Okay, so I have a fab. I will set a listener on this. What is the listener? If somebody on click on this. Okay, somebody on click on this button, what should happen? It is shown. So on click listener is just one type of events that we can listen into. There are plenty of other listeners as well. For example, let's say I will do a binding on the fab. Okay, if I say set on, you see, set on click listener is one. Set on click listener, there is a method passing. Set apply listener insect, capture point listen, on context click listener, on context listener, on create context menu listener. There is where if somebody dragged on focus change, what should happen? There are a lot of things that we can listen to. So one particular thing is click, that is a short touch. If you just tap on it like this, it's called on click listener. But there are some occasions what we can do is we can long press it. Okay, when we can long press it. So we have the listener called set on long click listen. Okay, so what should happen if we long press this? Okay, simple. Let's say we want to show a snack bar as well, and we will call. I will just copy and I will just not copy this. What I will do is I will change the text. I will change the text of the dummy text that we have put in here. If you guys can remember, I have put a dummy text here. I will change the dummy text content to something else. Okay, so I will do something like this. I have a binding yes, I have a binding to info text view, and I will say, okay, the text, it should be long press or have done. Okay, let's see why it is getting an errors. Required B boolean. Okay, I think yeah, so I have to say set text. I can't, like, I have to say text and pass it. Okay, not the case. Let me check. Is it set text? Info view. Okay, text. What's wrong? Binding. Okay. Required boolean create expression plotting action machine. Okay, there is one thing I think I should return in here. Wait a second, I think I have misuse set on log click listener. Set on click listener. You have to set it true. Okay, that is okay. View. I don't think I need the view differentiation. Set on log click listener. See it in Kotlin. Okay, we have to call this return set on click listener true. Okay, there you go. So set on click listener, it's expecting us to return Boolean. So we have to always return true if it is done. So I will say this is something mandatory on the bottom. You can say false or not. So binding text view, sorry, info text view, and I will set the text. Let's say I want to text it long press is press, how do you call it? Press is done. Okay, and let's see whether it is works or not. Let me fire up my emulator, and rather than I'm clicking on it, I am clicking long. Now you can see long press is done. Okay, so if I click on it, it will show a small stack bar, but if I long press it, it will say long press is done. Since it is the whole thing, all the same thing, it's not going to change. So there you go. So you can change the text in here. You can act on different events. So we will do something crazy. I'm not sure it will work. Binding info text view, let's say background. Okay, I'm not sure how we're going to set a background in here. What is expected in here? Let's see what is the expected for the background. Drawable background. Let me check. I can change the text view background color, or I can do it programmatically. Or we can do it programmatically. Let's see. It's not showing any Okay, what we can do is we can create a resource. Let's try it out. I mean, we should learn everything. And one thing that we can do is we need to define some colors in here. So we have something called in our XML, oh, sorry, in the values. Yes, there is something called color.xml where you can define your colors. Okay, let me define a new color. I will call these, let's say, red. And I will have these values to be 0. Let's see. Okay, so this thing should be 0. This one should be FF. This one should be FF. I think this should be FF. So it will give it. Okay, there you go. So if you want red, this is the opacity, I think, and this is the hex color. And now we have a red color. Now I need to make that color in the text view. So I think I have something called set background, and I have to define a resource. So r dot color dot red. Would it work? Public, no documentation found. I'm not sure. Let hope it works. I'm not sure. It's not giving any errors, as I can see. No, it's compiling errors. See log for more details. Okay, that's fine. Background. I think I have to otherwise give something like this. Not sure. Kotlin, how are we gonna do that? Resource. Let's see. Set background, color for text view. Kotlin. Kotlin. Set background resources. Okay, Kotlin background. Set background resources. Okay, I have used the set background resource method. In here, I will say color ir dot color red. Okay, supposed to be not being any errors. Let me run it again. Let's see. I will long press. There you go. Long press done, and the color is changing to red. Okay, and I can change the text color as well. I think I say binding info text view color. I think foreground color. Foreground. Foreground, I'm not sure for that color dot, let's say white. Seems not is it color? Current text color. Text color. Dot color dot white. No, I think I'm misreading the documentation. Okay, in such a case, let me show how you guys can get out of this trouble. So Stack Overflow is there. Okay, so this is what I do. This is how I get things around. So I will say text view background color Kotlin programmatically or something like that. Android text view set foreground color for foreground. Yes. Foreground color programmatically. That's because we are changing something from the code. So how we gonna set it? Okay, we can do something like set text color and parse it. Okay. Set text color, get resource, get color, whatever the color is. Okay, that is something else. Set text color, get resource, and app compact, get color, and the context and some color. Okay. Yeah, there are a lot of ways that I think we can do this. Set background color, integer, pass, whatever we are doing in here. But most of the time, this one is set color. We can pass the color and give it now. But if you are in the color resource, set text color compact activity, this something will be like good, I think. Okay, let's try it out. Where is my Android Studio? Okay. Set text color. Okay. I have to give a color dot id dot color. I don't think this will work. Color dot white. Seems to be working. Set text color. Let's run it again. See whether it's working. Now we have dummy text on black, and if I long press, no, I think I have done something wrong in here. Set text color. It's not showing in white anyhow. Whether I have put no. Okay, that's up to you. I mean, you guys can get the idea how we gonna programmatically change anything. So if something is related to the view itself, I mean, some components when we are doing some changes, it need to know what is the view that we are interacting with. So the first parameter of this thing is going to return the view itself. That means the fab itself. Normally, if you have if you have not defined it by default, Kotlin name is as it. Okay, but in here we for the normal on-click listener, we have put it as view. Okay, you can call it view, or if you can leave it just it as if you want. So you can change things here and there and see for yourself what will make more sense. Okay, so go for it. Go for these kind of changes. Sorry. Sorry about that. So you can go for different listeners in here. Set on long click listener, set on click listener. Sorry, even though these are like the most common used ones, there are a lot of other listeners that you can put in. And once you are done with these listeners, you are familiar with these listeners, you can change anything. So I have changed text view text, background color, the text color I did not seems to be working. Something that, I'm not sure. I might be using the wrong API to do the change. Okay, let's you guys can figure it out. Something that you guys can do in spare time. So the basic is there. Now you know how to interact with these components. So we have these on-click listener or on long-click listener. Use the APIs to manipulate the things that you need to do. Okay, so there you go. So the basic bindings, navigation, and interaction. So these are like the basic concept that you will most of the time need to interact with the components. Of course, there are like a lot more things going on, but to give you a starting point to work with you guys in some kind of view, this is how we're going to do. So even this is not recommended, as you guys can see when we are getting the text, we are using a resource. Okay, we are using something called what do you call that? Strings. Okay, if you guys can remember, we have this string.xml. As I mentioned earlier, we should use something like this. Otherwise, the whole point of having a XML file will differ, will not be useful if we are hard code string like this. Okay, so find a way how we can refer the string file and put it in the text rather than hard coding this thing here. Okay. All right. Any questions up until this, guys, regarding the bindings? So we talked about UI binding and listeners and navigation. Any questions up until this? Okay. All right. Seems to be no. So play around this and find what you guys can do with these kind of things and make cool applications. Okay. Right. Let's move on to a few other things. So we talked about the main activity. So we'll look into fragments. But since you guys have a lot of knowledge in I have explained a lot in activity. The activity and fragments are like a little bit same, though they have differences. So by glance looking at this, you guys can see, okay, there is a fragment and it is like what do you call extend a fragment fragment class. And there is this fragment binding. Okay, it's the same binding as the first activity binding that we have done. So whenever you are creating a XML for these fragments, it creates the binding and it's going to inflate container attached to parent and everything. But remember, if you closely look at the life cycle events, those are two different life cycle events. So if you look at the main, you have the life cycle event on create. Okay, but if you look at the fragments, you have on create view. Okay, so life cycle events are different, but they act the same way most of the time. But they have different things, because since a fragment is attached to an activity, it's not behaving exactly like an activity, but they have a little bit of different life cycle events. So you guys should know, okay, this is a fragment event, and this is where the fragment and activity are interacting with each other. That kind of knowledge that should be there. So it's up to you guys to go and see the documentation on what are the on create view is supposed to do. Okay, on create view lifecycle events, what are the other lifecycle events? As you can see, there is another one on view created. After view created, what should happen? Okay, this is where the bindings happens. Okay, the UI bindings. And after the binding happens, what should happen? Okay, so after the binding is happened, only then we are using these bindings to interact with the application. But in the main activity, you can see we have done it in the on create as well. There can be bottleneck when we are having a lot of methods in on create. But in fragment, we have this method on view created. Okay, after the view created, what should happen? Okay, simply it's saying the binding, using the bindings, there will be first button. If you click on it, of course, you will see this first button, that is the next button over here. And within the fragment, you will say, okay, I will put a listener on the this first button. And what should happen on when we click on the set on click listener, you will say find navigation controller. Okay, we will say, okay, we have this find navigation controller under the fragments. Since these fragments are known to the activity, so find navigation control is known to them, and we can say navigate. Okay, what should navigate? If you guys can remember, we have created actions. Okay, so in the navigation controller, the navigation graph that we have created, we have several actions to be fired. So we know, okay, let's go to the actions in here and go to the code view. This is the action that is going to be firing on. Okay, this is the action that we're going to be firing on. The action is action first fragment to the second fragment, and the destination where it should go. Okay, if we say the destination is for the second fragment, what will it do is the navigation controller will navigate to the second fragment. They know the action. Okay, they know the action. This is the action. This action has a destination on it, and they will automatically do the navigation from first fragment to the second fragment. We just have to point out, okay, execute this action. This action will do the transition for you. Okay, so on destroy, when we are doing when you are destroying this view, make sure the binding is set to null to possibly to reduce memory leaks. Okay, and you can play around this as well. Fragments are a little bit light. So you will see the bindings are here and everything is like quite similar to the activity itself. And only thing has changed is when you click on the bindings, the navigation should go to the next one, and that's it. It's really simple on in terms of understanding the code. Okay, let's go to the emulator, and when we click on next, you can see the second fragment and the changes that we have done already there. Okay. Yeah, we have these things, we have the previous, next, and it's all look good. And yep. So I'm not gonna go with the second fragment as well because it's gonna be obviously the same thing. Only thing is we have two buttons, and the third button is there, and it will make things work. So one thing, guys, when you are developing fragments, activities, and whatever the code that you guys are writing, make sure not to overcomplicate things. Okay. So in here, you will find this class around 50 lines. Okay. So 50 is like a very low number, comparing these code comments and everything. But make sure your code is very easy to understand. Try to make the code much less as possible, like have less number of lines, less number of logic per fragment per activity. Okay, if your main activity is going around like thousands of lines, then it is not good code. Okay, you have to master yourself how we can reduce the number of lines within this application. Okay, for here the bindings and everything we are supposed to have in here, but to make things more simple, maybe we can have smaller classes, smaller methods, or maybe functions to execute the task in a different way. You guys always should look into those options. Otherwise, what will happen is it's not gonna be a code that you guys can see at a one glance and understand what the hell is going on. Okay, so make sure you guys look into the code itself and write very smaller code, smaller chunks. As smaller as it is, it's gonna be best. Okay. All right. First fragment, the third fragment, and we talk about fragments. We talked about activities, how we're gonna navigate. And one thing I like you guys to try it out is starting a new activity from a fragment or an activity. Okay, so I mentioned that we don't use the multiple activity approach right now, but there are some cases we might need to go for a different activity than what we are seeing in here. So for example, our main application would look something like
on the top bar, we have something and we have some main content. But for some reason, we want to go for a totally different experience, like where we have a camera, full screen camera activities coming on, or there may be a setting page coming on, which is totally different than this one. So we can't like move a fragment and get the exact UI. Or maybe sorry, or maybe it's totally different than the UI expected. There might be, app bar. Rather than hiding what we have, it's easy to create another activity and work with that. So it's up to you to do the coding and find the things that you will need. Okay, how I can start another activity rather than changing the fragment navigation bar. How do I start a new activity from a current activity or from a fragment? So that is something that you guys need to do. Once you guys are good enough with the fragments and everything. Okay, we talk about the third fragment, first fragment, and yeah. So there are a lot of other things that we need to talk about, but I'm not going to go in much deep in this XML-based ones, but I would like you guys to focus on the compose-based UI components. Okay, that's because a lot of applications are changing in from XML-based to what do you call the compose view. So it's more of an easy not an easy transition, but we should know how these things are working, and we should focus on changing these things in compose. Okay, so if you guys can remember, I created one module in basic XML, and I have created another module which is from the compose view. Okay, so we will be looking into the compose view and we will see how we can look into these codes. Okay, so by looking at the driver module that we have seen, if you look at it very closely, you will see that Robel is there. Robel resource is there. The resources for different resolutions, it is also there. Values, yes, string and themes, everything is there. But the main thing that you will be missing, that a lot of us is working with, the layout. Okay, the layout is not here. The XML layout is not here in this Android application. So if you look at the main activity even itself, you can see that the code is a little bit different than what we have seen so far. Okay, we are seeing something really, or we can see the onCreate method, but the content of it is a little bit different than what we have seen. So it is somewhat really different than what we have seen. So we will try to run this and see what's going on. Actually, I think we can't run this. We got an error. Let's fix that first and try to get it on. So I'm running this application, then I get the error in here. Okay, that is also good that we see errors, because otherwise we will think the application working perfectly. That is not the case. Most of the time, the coding that you do, it is like 30% of your time, and 70% of your time will be fixing errors or fixing breaking changes, whatever the mess you have made. That kind of things will be what you will be really doing. Okay, believe me. So that's okay, completely okay. If we get something like this, we will look into more ways to get over these things, how we can use. Okay, this version 1.1 of Compose compiler require Kotlin this version, but you appear to be using
7 point which is not known to the compositable. Please fix your configuration. Oh, suppress Kotlin fixability, but does not say I warn you. That means okay. We are using Compose 1.1. It requires Kotlin 1.610, but we are using a higher version. So it is not known. They might be incompatible with each other. So that might be the case. This is coming in. Either way, one way what we can do is we can reduce the Kotlin version, but it's not recommend to go backwards. Always go forward. So the Compose version, which is using 1.1, maybe we can update that. Let's see. I'm not sure whether we can even do that. Let's get that error. Kotlin 1.10. That's normally what I do when I come across something like this. I go to Stack Overflow. Of course, there is ChatGPT coming on. If you guys haven't checked it, please check it out. Wonderful AI tool. Okay. So it says Compose version, this one, Kotlin version, this one, and I got the same error, Kotlin on 7. So they have say Kotlin compile extension is 1. This we have to change this, and Android might have to change these things. And this is developer paging help to pick compatible versions. Okay, that's something new. Okay, as you guys can see, we can just randomly do the changes and see whether the versions are compatible. Seems to be there is a compatibility map that we can use. That is awesome. So we are in I think 271. Yes. Yes. Okay, 270. Sorry, 1720. So 1720 is compatible with Kotlin Composer version 1.4 alpha 1. So I think this one, this version will be compatible with Composer as well as the Kotlin version that we are using. We are using Kotlin 1.720, and the corresponding Composer version is this one. Let's try to change it now. If you guys can see, they are saying, okay, this version is 1.1. So 1.1 is work with 610 as they are complaining. Let's go and try to change that. Kotlin version, now they are changing in here. JetBrains Kotlin Android, that is the build plugin. Kotlin compiler extension, okay. Build script extc. Let's go to project, and we will go to build.gradle. Do we have some setting for this? Minimum SDK. Kotlin Compose. Okay. Kotlin Compose extension 1.111. Let's change it to 1.40 alpha 1. Okay, see, now if we do something like this in Gradle, make sure to sync, otherwise it won't work. I mean, we have changed the things, but we need to make sure we downloaded everything in here. Okay, open. I think I don't have any issues in here. Okay. Maybe I'm good to go. Let's try it and run and see. Build.gradle is running. There you go. No documentation found. What is this? This is, I think, something. Okay. So there you go. We got our first Compose activity. It's not big thing. It says just hello Android. But we got to know how we can get the information, how we can tackle the issues and everything. Just search for it. Make sure you search the right thing. So yeah, seems to be working okay for now, and it says hello Android. That's it. Yeah. So we got the error out of the way. Now we go back to our code. And there you go. What do you see in here? It's gonna be something that we have not seen in here. So if you guys can see that, it is showing the view right alongside the right alongside our application itself. So okay, that's cool. That's new. And what we can do, let's say there is something called a surface. Okay, all right. Set content, if you guys can remember, set content is one of the views that we have seen in the application in XML. Set content is where we set the things up, what we need to see. Okay, it's saying SNG theme, whatever it is, and it's saying surface and whatever these things are, and it is saying greetings. And if I go to greetings, it is something called text, and okay. And there is something called preview, composable. Okay, there are a few things. Let's see what we can do. So first thing first, the architecture of the application, it's pretty much the same. Okay, you guys can see the build.gradle is here, resources is there, Java file is here, and bunch of new things are in here. Other than that, the Android itself, the activity, the main activity class, almost identical to that. You have the basic lifecycle event that is showing something to us. Okay, that's cool. And the content is showing something, and modifier and everything is showing something, and we get the Hello Android default preview. Okay, so earlier on we had the code split and design view in our application. Now when we do the code or split view, we get the activity class itself. The class itself we are getting here, not the XML that we used to have, but rather than that we get the direct UI on the other hand, and this side we have the code that we are trying to change. Okay, so we have something hello Android. You can see that it is passing something here. Let's change it and see what happens. Hello Android, welcome. Okay, while we are doing that, you guys can see that default preview, it is also changing. Okay, that's new, that's good. And yeah, so we get the preview around here. That is cool. And let's say we want another thing to show. Okay, another text view that we need to show. Okay, let's say in the same thing, text, I will say this is nice. Okay, but it's not showing the preview, right? It's a preview built out of date, build and refresh. Okay, right, there is something going on, but it is not the expected way. It's showing one on another. Let's remove this. Okay, that is true, and I will put under greetings, and I will live reload and see whether it is working. Okay, default preview is there, but it is not showing our view. So let me get this clear, and let's get started on what we need to show and how we need to show. So it's simple. Simply what we have to do is the set content view is the view that we are interested in, that's we're going to be showing. Okay, so we will be showing a set content view, but in this scenario, rather than we are pointing out to XML layout or something like that, we will be using a coding based UI library. So if you guys are familiar with frameworks like Flutter, or maybe if you have seen Swift UI, this is the same thing. Okay, the code, the UI that we need to see, we are coding along with that. Okay, if you want to see a text,
Okay, there is a view called text that we can simply show. If you want to show a button, there is a view that we can show a button. Okay, that's really simple. But building those constraint layout and all those things, those are a little bit harder in here because you don't have that drag and drop functionalities. You can't visualize it and one go. But there are ways like this preview over here, we can get a glance on it. So the content view is wrapped around this SNG, the theme. Okay, so if I go to the theme, and by the way, it is in this theme directory. And if I go to the theme directory, and it is just a function. Okay, but the most important part that you will see, it is annotated with this composable annotation. Okay, that means this is we are indicating to Android, okay, this is going to be something that we will be able to render out in the application, in the surface, in the content that we are trying to see. This is something that you will see. Okay, but in this scenario, this is going to be a theme, just a theme that we have, we will be seeing. Okay, we'll be using the material theme in this section, and we'll do bunch of customization in here when we are defining this function. So we can say dark theme is system dark theme. If the system is dark, then automatically it will be a dark theme. And dynamic color is like where we can change things. It's a new feature. We possibly won't need this. And the content, so whatever the content that we will be seeing in here, it is something going to be a composable unit in the sense we are not we are returning one thing at a time. Okay, something like it's something is as the documentation say, it's something like void in Java. Okay, in the sense we will just return one. So we have bunch of variables in here, and we have a bunch of view contents in here, and we using it notable and whatever. So whatever we are doing, we are just creating a theme out of the values that we have. Okay, so we are creating a color scheme that is good for us, and we are creating a view, and we are seeing the views in edit mode and all those things. But at the end, we are returning a material theme. Okay, we are returning a material theme. That's how we that's simply a theme for the whole application. So when the theme is provided and the content is given, it is themed by this material theme section. So we are just simply wrapping material theme around our own theme, which is called this SNG 222, whatever the theme. Okay, so basically we are creating a theme and we are putting our content in there, and we are theming it. Okay, that means by using a theme, the main advantages is when you change some theme value in a central place, it get all affected down all the components that it inherits. So we don't have to worry about changing each and every section of the application. Now, if you guys can see that this theme that we are finding here, it is accepting the content. So whatever the content that we are trying to pass, it will be passed to this material theme content. Okay, by default we have selected the color theme. We have created the color theme using this logic, which is not relevant at this moment unless you want to change some colors reference. And we have used typography in the sense how the fonts and everything is going to be looked like. Okay, that is also we will be using the default one. And within this theme, what we will be seeing, okay, the seeing is something, the content. So the content is when we are defining this SNG theme, within the braces, we are providing something. So this is the content that we are projecting over the material theme. Okay, I know it is a little bit, new coming from the XML declarative for this, but believe me, it will take a little bit time. I know you guys are adjusting to the old one, but the new one is also, you will need a little bit adjusting to this, but it will make more sense when you are doing and when you know the things and all those things. Okay, it will take a little bit time, but bear with me. You will see the you can see the content and everything, how these things are glued together. Okay, so it is themed. So whatever the theme is going to be showing around here, and we will be using a surface view. Okay, the surface view we can change. Okay, fix the modifiers with modifiers. It say modifier to be applied to the layout corresponding to the surface. That means how we gonna handle the surface. Okay, we can just simply show some view, or we can have a surface, and within the surface you will be developing. So theme has a surface, surface have a greeting, and so on and so forth. Okay, so sorry. So surface, sometimes it is not enough to, the default is not enough. We need to customize these things. If you guys can remember, we have in our XML, the width, match parent, match web content, those kind of things. So we want to change some attributes of our surface. So we can pass the attributes like this and change those things. Okay, but for the theme, you guys can see that we haven't changed anything. We are just using the defaults. In here we can use the dark theme, dynamic colors, and everything. We're just using out of it. Okay, we have given the default values, so it is not asking. But if you want, you can always go and change these things. But in here you have to do, you can say dark theme, you can always say truth. Okay, rather than sticking to the default value in here, we can always go and edit that dark theme to be true. Now if I run this application, you see, it is running on the dark theme as we suggest, as the instructor. But if we do not pass anything, okay, if we do not pass anything, what will happen? It will take the system default as it's instructed, the default value in here. If you are using dark theme, get the system, system in dark mode. If it is in dark mode, it will draw the dark theme. Otherwise, it will go with the light theme. So always you can customize, or you can just go ahead with the default things. So it's a bit weird, I know, bear with me. And we have a surface. Either we sometimes, if we don't provide these things, it will go to the default values. But if you want to override those things, we can always override those things. All right, but make sure it is optional. But sometimes there are instances where these things are mandatory. Okay, so in this scenario it is not mandatory, but for some reason we can make these things. If the default value right here, this is the default value, if it is not provided sorry, if it is not provided, okay, hey, you are not providing a default value, so what you have to do is you have to say, okay, dark theme true. Okay, if it is not providing, you have to make sure the value is given to it. Okay, otherwise it won't work. But for now, I am going with the default value. Either you can have it or you can remove it, since the default values are there. So we have a surface, and within the surface, we will see something called greeting. Okay, so what is greeting? Greeting is just another view that we have created. Okay, so you can see it is a function. Okay, always if you look at this section, a greeting is a function. It's a simple function which is returning just a text. It is returning a text. So what is a text? As you guys can remember, we have something called text view in Android. Similar thing goes here. If the greeting has a text view, we can have a text. Greetings have is accepting a text, and it is asking for some input, and the text, it will show hello and whatever the value that is passed in here, and concatenate welcome, and the text will return. So that's why it is showing greetings. I have pushed Android in here, so I can say Randika in here. So what we will say, hello Randika, welcome. If I refresh the build, you will see disable. I'm not sure why it is not. It should refresh. Not sure. Let's run it anyhow. The default view sometimes hello Randika, welcome. Okay, that is working, but in the preview it does not. It seems to be accepting. That's because we have something called a preview in here. Okay, this is the preview mode which we see it in here. Okay, this is not the live mode, this is the preview mode. So if I want to show I want to see a preview of whatever that we are trying to show, we can set a default preview view here, and we can arrange these things as we like. So you can see that in default preview mode, we are using the theme and the greeting. We are not going with the surface view, but if we go with the surface view and we put it in the same thing in here, let's refresh the preview. There you go. This is going to be the full view that we are working with, but it is not sure I can. Yeah. So I have managed to default get the preview in here, and you guys can see that I am going the surface as well as I am showing the background colors and everything. This is responsible for previewing this out. Okay. I'm not sure whether preview is okay. Let me get another preview. Yep. So you guys can see that I have created two previews. I call this default preview, and this one is default preview 2. And you guys can see that it is showing two different ones. So what I will do is I will call this as let's say default preview light, and I will call this default preview dark. Okay, so now if I refresh again, so rather than having one different view, I have one default preview light, default preview dark. So I have two things, but it's the same view that I see. But what if I want to see these changes that I am doing in dark mode? Okay, so if you guys can remember, I can override the dark mode in our theme. I can say dark mode, let's say true by default. Okay. True, and I will refresh this. Now what I can do is I can test my application in the light mode and the dark mode at the same time. I can preview it's how it's going to look like in the application in both light mode and dark mode. So if you're trying to do this in another like the old way, XML based one, the only option is that you need to run the application, change it to dark mode, and test it out. But right now, what you have to do is you just have two previews, and you can easily see the difference. But if you have a lot of landscape or
I'm not sure whether this is allowing this. No, I'm not particularly sure. I think I have seen somewhere. Like you can have this side by side and put it in a huge screen, and you can see, okay, this is how it's gonna look in the dark mode. This is how it's gonna be in light mode, and that kind of situation. Concurrently, you can work on both light mode and dark mode and how it works. It's not only light mode and dark mode. You can have much different previews as you like, and you can work with those things. And you can put different content and see. For the example, I'm giving a greeting Ramdika in here. Let's say greeting some long name and see if this still works. Welcome. Okay, so you guys can see that how it looks like gonna be in a small name, how it looks gonna be a huge name, and what are the changes that you need to do. That kind of things you can still do it in this preview mode, and it will help you and save you a lot of times rather than running this and see it in the emulator or your device. You can just simply say, okay, this is not going to work, we have to do something and we have to make it work somehow, and we can do that. So even, I mean, this is one of the example. You can even make this set content view in a different composable and put it there, and you can just simply call it in here. So even that is possible. So it's really easy and fun to work with these two different views. If you don't need a live preview on the dark mode, you just simply comment it out and it will only show the live mode. That is also easy. So likewise, you can do a lot of changes in here, and you guys can play around a lot of things in here and work it out. So we haven't done any like huge application. We haven't looked at what do you call the layouts and everything. So my experience yeah, in Compose, we don't have like very complex layouts like coordinator layouts, because anything that we are doing can be achieved with simple layouts like horizontal layouts and vertical layouts. So we will see how we can put a horizontal layout or vertical layout and see if this works or not. Let's create a simple layout and see whether we can put two greetings and on top of each other. Okay. So what I will do is I will create this into a new composable. Okay, let's do that. At composable, I will call this function. I will call two greetings name. Two greetings. Okay, I'll just have it like that, and I will have a surface and a greeting. Okay, now rather than I'm having this one, I will replace this to greetings, and if I want to preview it as well, rather than having this, I will have two greetings and refresh. It should not change a little bit. Okay, so I am rather than showing a modified version, I am working with two greetings now. I have a surface and I have a greeting. And I will copy paste and I will say Ramdika Android. And if I refresh, there you go. So hello Ramdika, hello Android, welcome. It's a little bit blurred out. It's not laying out as we expected. So what we need to do is we need to have some sort of laying out mechanism. If you guys can remember, we have coordinator layout, the vertical layout, and all those stuff. Let's see what are the options that we have in Compose. So we have something called VStack, if I can remember. Horizon, was it stack simply?
See, I can't remember already. So what we'll do? I will go to Android Compose layouts. JetGrack Compose quick tutorial. Okay, lesson 1. These are like the set content, elements, preview. It's preview element. Okay, there you go. Configuring layout. There is row and columns. See, easily forget because to be honest, guys, there are a lot of stuff going on my head. Swift UI, Flutter, and everything. A little bit mixed up together. That's going to be the case. So if you want to have something like row, we have something called row. Okay. Row is accepting more than one elements. Let's give it a refresh. Okay, there you go. We have in a single row, but our expectation is to have a column. So I have a column in here. There you go. So we have built-in layouts such as this. Then we can work on these layouts that we want to work with. And say, for example, we need a button. Okay, and I think I will go with the material button. I'm sure material button is here. I'll just go with button. Okay, on click. Let's refresh. Okay, there you go. So since this is theme under the surface is theme under material. If you guys can remember, we are theming the button under the what do you call material theme. If you guys can remember, we are going with the material theme. So I don't have to say material button, just say button. It will apply the button things there. Okay, so on click, if you guys can remember, we have set on click listener. Same thing. What should happen on click? Okay, there is a to-do section over here. I can write to show a snack bar, or I can show a simple text message, so I can log it. So I want to change the text. So do I have any option on text? So if I click button and I can see, okay, this is the modifier, enable, color, border, and the content for it. So I will just go for the content and I will say text, and I will say within the button text, we will call it like click me. Click on this. I will. Do I have formatting option? I can't remember. Okay, anyhow. So you can see if I want to put the text, I have to create a text view and put the text on whatever I want to do. And when I click on it, what should happen? Okay, so when I click on it, I want to show a log. Let's say log E debug message, and I will say something like this is what we call to greetings. Okay, and the greeting message is sorry. Message is you clicked. Okay, so log D is where you can find logging information. Like it's not going to be showing on the screen like here, but it's gonna do a change. It's going to print out something in our logcat. We'll see the logcat right now even. So if I refresh, and I'm not sure the preview is supporting logcat, and I think the click is not supported at this moment. So we have to run it and see. Okay, you can see that you click message is showing up. And the logcat is a special place where you can, if something is not visible in the UI and you want to see it in a place where you want to like a terminal kind of thing, you have to go to the logcat and see the logcat logs in here that you like. Okay, so I can even the logcat is expecting two variables. One is the tag. That means you can easily look at the things, because logcat is really easily get populated with all the other, you can see that a lot of things going on here. So I can just have a tag and I can filter it by tag. There you go. So when I click on, if I have a tag on it, that means I can only see messages starting with this tag and the message. So if I have the emulator run it again, and if I click on it, now I can see only the messages with this message. So logcat is somewhere you can put messages. Also, if there are like errors that you can't find, errors that is popping up here and there, you can find those things most of the time in logcat. So logcat is a place where you definitely see a lot of errors popping up. So you can look into what are those errors. So for some reason you can't see the errors, make sure you remove this filter, otherwise it is not showing properly in here. So there are a lot of logs going on. I don't need, I just can clear it. And if I click it again, it is showing. As you can see that there are like several other logs going on which are not related to us. That's why we have the filter on the tag-based filter. Then you can filter these things out. Okay, we covered a lot. We covered a lot today, and I think the code formatter, it should work. If I'm not mistaken. Control A, also Command Shift A. What is that? Effect format. Not sure. I need to find the code formatter. I don't like this kind of code. Effect format. Mission is called. That's not showing. Yeah. So you guys got the idea, basic idea. So we have things called composable, and whatever you want to put, you have to put in these small chunks. We have columns, we have buttons, whatever the things that we need in XML and the code. Now we are combine those together. And we have put it in one single place. So it will make things easy. And obviously you might see this is a little bit weird or different. Don't worry, when you get used to it, it will make more sense. And right now, I think we have covered the two ways, the old XML way and the composable way. I would, if I am creating a new application, I would definitely go with the new composable way rather than sticking to the old XML way. But there are trade-offs. I'm not saying that the composable is the latest and greatest. It's true. But as I have seen several occasions, the XML one is much faster. But those are in milliseconds compared to the effort that we are putting. Those are like very negligible times. So there are trade-offs. If you are not new to this, it will be a little bit hard to understand at first. But if you're following Flutter, Swift UI, even React Native, these things will make more sense into you guys, especially if you are doing Flutter. This is something new. All you have to know is this is a view. how to manipulate this view and how to get your UI done correctly. That's it. Okay. Any questions up until this, guys, with the compose view and anything else that you guys feel confused? As I mentioned, practice. Okay. So we don't use XML anymore. We do everything in this code. Any questions up until this? Okay. Awesome. So for the next lecture, I would definitely go with, we have done a lot of coding in these sections. So this is like the forward implementation of our code. But for next time, we will go with something like testing, because a lot of you guys coming into the industry without the knowledge of testing in place. But remember, testing is something very important if you are looking into coding. It's not only coding, but you should be responsible for your code. So you guys should know how you guys should test your code itself. So we'll look into that as well. Yeah. So what is the standard way, XML or composable? How can I say? There is no standard way. I mean, there is new way and old way. The old way is doing things is XML. New way is using composable. So there is no standard at any given point. If somebody says, okay, I am good with XML, I'll go with XML. If somebody is good with composable, I will definitely go with composable. It's a two-way of doing things. There is no, standard. Even if you like, you can mix these together. Okay, that is also possible. You can have an activity in composable, and you can have an activity in XML. So it's up to you. There is no restriction. You just mixing these things together. That I would not recommend unless you are migrating to a new application, because most of the things that I see nowadays, they are migrating for the compose. So pretty much it will be standard in not like today or tomorrow, but in a recent future. XML base will be like deprecated very soon. So it's better to learn both, because still some there are projects that is rely on XML. So composable is rapidly growing the attention, and it is take over. It's going to take over properly, since it is more easy to do, is more superior than the XML based one. So I'm not saying this is going to be standard today, but maybe in few years, yes. Same thing happened in iOS. Okay, iOS have this thing called storyboard, which is something like that we have seen the XML view that we can drag and drop things and everything, and we can bind everything with the stroke of a button and all those things. The later on they found that okay, it is good, but they have introduced something called Swift UI, which is something similar to this. It's pretty much the same thing, if I may say, unless the Swift and Kotlin language barrier. All the things seems to be really linked up together. So I'm not saying that these are two different things and that will work on different UI, but it's still you will be easy to do the translation. I mean, the trend is going towards this composable version, so I would recommend if you guys stick to this one. But as I mentioned earlier, the earlier one you should know at least to get a basic idea how these things are arranged. Okay. All right. Good questions. Anything else? Okay. Seems to be not. All right then. Let's do like this. We will see you guys in next lecture. I'll stop sharing. Stop.